And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian. Thank you very much for joining me today. It is Veterans Day, so happy Veterans Day, and I highly doubt I have any veterans listening to my podcast, but in case you know someone who is a veteran, I know a few veterans, thank you for everything, and a happy Veterans Day to all of them. So, so, of course, welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast, where we talk about, of course, all the latest breaking movie news that came out this week. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about a few news items that came out last week after the podcast went up. Quite a few of them came out, and one of them really came out right as the podcast went up, which I was really upset about. This news item, one quick news item that we have, is The Predator will not take place in the suburbs. Now, there was a report that came out last week that said the new movie that's directed by Shane Black, the new Predator film called The Predator, was going to take place in the suburbs. And of course, the idea had, many fans worried and questioned the direction of the reboot/sequel, but even me being a fan, looking forward to it, I, at the time, and I still, even if this news item didn't come out, I said, it's very Shane Black-esque, so it's not completely out there, and it doesn't completely not make sense. I mean, it is Shane Black. He has a very weird sense of humor, so I was okay with it. But Shane Black reached out to Collider, and he pretty much assured them and told them that The Predator does not take place in the suburbs, but he didn't relay any more information about it. So we're still in the dark a little bit about The Predator. All we know is that it will be directed, of course, by Shane Black. It will star Boyd Holbrook from Narcos and the upcoming film Logan as the lead. Olivia Munn is currently in talks to join the film, and it has a release date of February 9th, 2018. So that's all we know so far about The Predator. The next news item I was talking about, Rami Malek is set to play Freddie Mercury, and Bryan Singer is in talks to direct. Now, a biopic about Freddie Mercury, of course, the famed singer of Queen, which is, depending on who you ask, is the greatest rock band to ever, or just greatest band in general to ever walk the face of the earth. It's been in the works for a while. For a little bit, it looked like it wasn't going to happen. For a long time, Sacha Baron Cohen was attached to play Freddie Mercury, and the years went by, and nothing ever really happened, and turned out because it was due to creative differences between him and the band, and how the film should be approached, and eventually he just dropped out, and the film has been quiet ever since, until now. Now we know that Rami Malek, the lead star in Mr. Robot, is attached to play Freddie Mercury in the biopic that is now called Bohemian Rhapsody, which is very appropriate. And moreover, the film is being written by Anthony McCartan. He wrote The Theory of Everything, which is the movie about Stephen Hawking, and now they're in talks with director Bryan Singer to direct, which is pretty cool. Now, the film doesn't have a production date just yet, and there's no word yet on what exactly and how exactly the film will approach Freddie Mercury's story. For those of you guys who don't know about Freddie Mercury, again, he was a lead singer of Queen. He died at a pretty early age. I think he was 45 when he died. I know he wasn't in his 50s yet when he passed away. He passed away of AIDS, and he of course was just one of the most famous faces. He still is one of the most famous faces in music and on the planet. So a biopic is, it isn't out there. It's something that, again, they've been working on for years, and something that's I think due, really. As for Rami Malek playing Freddie Mercury, I think that's a pretty solid choice. I mean, I watched Mr. Robot, so I'm familiar with his work, and he's great. He's done little things besides Mr. Robot too. He was in The Pacific. He was in The Master. He was in Short Term 12. He had a really weird and small role in the Need for Speed movie, which I think is one of the first things that I really saw him in and really noticed him in. I saw The Pacific, like, I didn't see this. I don't remember him in The Pacific, but I know he was in it. And The Master, which is something I haven't watched yet. That's the Paul Thomas Anderson movie with Joaquin Phoenix. And Short Term 12 is something I've been wanting to watch for a while too. I didn't know he was in that either. So I've only kind of really seen him in Need for Speed and Mr. Robot, which are two very different things. But he's a great talent. I think he's going to bring a lot to Freddie Mercury and to the movie. And as for Bryan Singer, depending on what he's doing, he's a really good director. He gave us The Usual Suspects. This will actually be his first non-superhero movie since Jack the Giant Slayer, which everyone kind of seemed to forget about. And before that, it was Valkyrie. So this is pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. This is something that this is another thing that I've been following since I've been following the news cycle as much as I have. This is a project that I've been following for a while too. So it's kind of nice to see it finally potentially happening this time around. So the final news item that came out last week after the podcast went up: a live-action Voltron movie is in the works. Universal Pictures is planning on bringing Voltron to the big screen, as Deadline reports the studio is slowly developing at that, a adaptation of the popular cartoon from the 80s. Of course, Voltron has an animated series right now on Netflix, which is actually going to premiere its second season in January next year, and Universal also has a writer in David Hayter. But the reports note that it's a slowly moving adaptation. It's still in the early stages script-wise, so they're still slowly working on it at the moment. And this is something that they acquired. Universal acquired the rights to Voltron when NBC bought DreamWorks. And of course, the Voltron. Well, not of course if you don't know it, but if you don't know, the Netflix animated series of Voltron is done by DreamWorks Animation, and of course, like I just mentioned, Universal was bought. Actually, not Universal. NBC Comcast bought Universal, and they bought DreamWorks as well. So that was kind of that whole little deal that came wrapped in one. And now they have the opportunity to make Voltron. Look, Universal isn't afraid to go into giant robot movies, since they did do the first Pacific Rim, and they actually just started production on Pacific Rim 2. But yeah, this is pretty interesting. That they're doing a Voltron movie. What's old is new again, apparently. They got Power Rangers coming out next year, and I don't know. It's interesting. It is. I've seen a few episodes of the Netflix animated series, and it isn't that bad, actually, to be honest with you. So as for a live action Voltron, I think it'd be interesting to see. And as for David Hayter, I think I'm pronouncing his last name right. If you don't know, he is a writer in Hollywood, and he has been attached to a few big films. He wrote the first two X-Men movies. He wrote Watchmen. He's written a few other stuff which wasn't that good, but those are kind of the three that really stick out. But more importantly, he's also a voice actor, and he is the voice actor for Solid Snake in the Metal Gear Solid franchise. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that he was also a writer. I didn't put the two together. So this is pretty cool. Now I kind of want him to be in the movie in some way, shape, or form, or voice a character or something. I don't know. But the idea of a live-action Voltron, again, I wouldn't mind seeing it, to be honest. Voltron has been in the works in Hollywood for a while too. It's one of those projects that keeps coming on and off, but nothing ever came from it. So as long as they got a good team, and so far they got David Hayter attached to it, I think we're looking at a potential new franchise if it does well. Alright, so those are the news items that came out last week. Let's talk about the news items that came out this week. First off, we're going to have some release updates for you guys. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's and Peyton Reed's, video game adaptation movie Rampage has a release date of April 20th, 2018. Bradley Cooper's directed remake of A Star Is Born with Lady Gaga in the lead role gets a September 28th, 2018 release. Also in 2018, Mission Impossible 6 will get released on July 27th, 2018. Tom Cruise, of course, will return for that. Christopher McQuarrie will also return and potentially co-write the script. And it looks like Rebecca Ferguson will also be returning as well. So those are your release dates for the moment. The next news item is Jurassic World 2 looks to add Rafe Spall and Toby Jones. Now, casting has begun, obviously, since we're talking about it. Variety reports that Rafe Spall, he was in films like Hot Fuzz, Life of Pi. He plays the writer interviewing the main character, and he was on recently HBO's show Roadies. And Toby Jones, who was Zola in the Captain America films, he's also on the Fox series Wayward Pines, are in talks to join the film. Now, if they officially sign on to join the project, they will of course join Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard, who are already attached to star. There's no word yet on who either of them will play just yet, but again, casting has gone underway and apparently is going full speed, as the report says that Universal is aiming to test 2 other key roles for the film as well. There's no word yet on the sequel's story, but Jurassic World director turned producer Colin Trevorrow teased the film would be a more, quote, suspenseful and scary film, while the new director, J.R.R. Bonaya, said the film will be a metaphor for the mistreatment of animals, both things we've talked about on the podcast before. Either way, I'm pretty sure that the film will be something that fans want to see. I mean, considering how many people saw Jurassic World 1, so I'm looking forward to it. I did really enjoy Jurassic World, and I'm interested in seeing how they go forward with it, especially hearing the comments by Trevorrow and the new director. And when it comes to Spall and Jones, they're great additions. Spall has a nice combination of comedy and drama to his resume, and pretty much anything that Toby Jones is in, he gives 100%. So both of them are they're not, like big household names, but when you see them, you're like, oh, that's the guy from this thing. And you start recognizing and remembering where they're from and who they played. So both of them are solid choices to join Jurassic World 2. So I'm looking forward to that. Jurassic World 2 begins filming early next year for a release date of June 22nd. Wait for it, 2018. A J.R.R. Tolkien biopic is in the works. Of course, we already are familiar with J.R.R. Tolkien if you're a fantasy fan of reading all his works, or maybe you just saw The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings movies like a bunch of other people. But J.R.R. Tolkien is about to have his own life made into a film by the producers of the Hobbit films and Lord of the Rings films, Robert Shea and Michael Lynn. The film will be called, very appropriately, Middle-earth, and will also be written by Agnes Fletcher, who is a new screenwriter in Hollywood, and will be directed by James Strong. He's filmed a lot of British TV shows like Broadchurch, which was actually remade here in America, called Grace Point, which he also directed a few episodes of. He's directed a few episodes of Downton Abbey, and he's directed a few episodes of Doctor Who. And reportedly, Fletcher has spent the last 6 years that's a long time, sifting through archival research and personal interviews. Tolkien, as he wrote the script for the film Middle-earth, the movie is being described as an epic story of, quote, Tolkien's early life and love affair with Edith Bratt, whom he later married. The couple lived happily in Oxford, surrounded by friends, but when war broke out in 1914, Tolkien embarked on 4 years of battle and hardship, and experience that influenced his Middle-earth stories. Now, this isn't the first time, actually, that Tolkien's life was going to be made into a movie. Back in 2014, there was actually 2 biopic movies in the works, because, of course, you always got to have 2 movies, the same thing. One of them was a straightforward biopic, like this is going to be. The other one was actually a faith-based film that would have featured C.S. Lewis. Which, if you're not familiar with the name, or if you're like, I know, I've heard that name before, that is the writer of the Chronicles of Narnia books. It would have followed their friendship. And just a little bit of information, which I didn't know until I read this, C.S. Lewis and Tolkien were actually friends, and Tolkien actually made Lewis, who was an atheist, convert to Catholicism, while Lewis encouraged Tolkien to finish his Lord of the Rings series. But of course, eventually, their friendship got a little sour over creative and religious differences, whatever that means. So I didn't know that. That was interesting. And supposedly that movie was going to get made first, but obviously it never did. And now we're back to square one, and we're back essentially to Middle-earth. So the film doesn't have a production date just yet, but it does help. They have a writer who has spent the last 6 years of his life researching J.R.R. Tolkien, and they have a pretty strong director in James Strong. No pun intended. Again, he's directed a bunch of British shows, Downton Abbey, Doctor Who, Broadchurch. He's directed a few episodes of the Hulu original series, 11/22/63. I think that was the one with James Franco. And he directed a soccer film called United, which looks to be one or two of his only feature films. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, I think I didn't know. Again, I didn't know the story between him and C.S. Lewis, so I don't know a lot about J.R.R. Tolkien. I know he served in the war, and I know that inspired him to do the Middle Earth stories, but I don't know too much about him personally. So I didn't even know. Again, I didn't even know he was friends with C.S. Lewis and converted him to Catholicism. But that's interesting. That's interesting, and I think that I don't know about the title Middle Earth. I think maybe just calling it Tolkien will be better, but we'll see what happens with that. I'm still interested in seeing it. I really am. I'm even more interested in seeing who they get to play Tolkien at this point. But we'll see. This is a bit of confirmation, which finally we get some confirmation on this. Michael Keaton is officially set to play the Vulture in Spider-Man: Homecoming. And again, like I mentioned, this is finally official, because we knew since the casting update started coming out for the new Spider-Man film that Michael Keaton was attached to play the villain until he dropped out. There was that weird moment where he dropped out for like a month or like a few weeks, and then he came back on board. It was really weird. But anyway, we found out that the villain would be Vulture. But we've never heard any confirmation that he was indeed gonna play Vulture and that he was indeed the villain until now. Marvel President Kevin Feige was speaking to the Toronto Sun when he confirmed that Keaton will be in Spider-Man: Homecoming as the villain. And this is the first time that we've heard anyone within the production say Keaton is in Spider-Man: Homecoming. So that's pretty cool. I'm glad that we finally get to hear that. It's not surprising or groundbreaking news, but I think it's just nice to actually hear it from someone, because everyone's like, "No, Michael Keaton's attached," but not really, because we don't know if he really is attached. So there you go. So he's finally gonna play the villain, or he's finally confirmed to be playing the villain, I should say. So we'll and that's not the only Spider-Man: Homecoming news we have. Tom Holland and Zendaya were on the Hollywood Reporter. They were talking to the Hollywood Reporter recently, and they had confirmed that Tom Holland has signed a 6-picture deal for Spider-Man. No surprise. And that Zendaya is still dodging questions on whether or not she's playing Mary Jane Watson. Tell me! So first one, like I mentioned, it's assumed that Tom Holland probably signed a multi-picture deal to play the new Peter Parker / Spider-Man, and that is indeed the case. Of course, he made his appearance in Captain America Civil War, where he was a smash hit and an instant favorite as Spider-Man. And the other, of course, could be his the next appearance what I'm talking about, is the other appearance, besides his own movie, Spider-Man: Homecoming, obviously. The next appearance could be Avengers: Infinity War, assuming that he actually stars, and he probably will, but again, let's just assume for the moment. But he did confirm that he will do 3 Spider-Man movies and 3 other appearances, so if he signed that kind of deal at the beginning, he's already done at least one of those. So he has 2 more solo Spider-Man films and 2 more appearances, which could, again, be the Avengers films. We don't know. Now, Holland also went on to say what we can expect about the film action-wise, saying every decision we make on set is based off how a kid would react to this situation. So every fight scene we have is designed in a way that's almost child-friendly, so he never actually punches anyone. I can't read, apparently. It's all done kind of by accident. I think the biggest difference is the youth and innocence. So that's what he said about the action of the film, which I think is kind of interesting. He's not going to punch anyone, and it's all done by accident. I think that's a good way to go. We kind of saw a little bit of that in Captain America: Civil War, so it should be interesting to see how all that goes. Going to Zendaya, who is a long rumor saying she was going to play Mary Jane Watson, and a lot of people were, of course, upset about that. Of course, there's bigger things to be upset about in the world right now, but we're not going to talk about that because I don't want to. But she talked a little bit about her character, seemingly pretty much suggesting that she is not playing the long-time Spider-Man love interest, Mary Jane Watson. Here's what she said. "My character is not romantic. My character is a very dry, awkward, intellectual, and because she's so smart, she just feels like she doesn't need to talk to people, so she comes off very weird." Of course, that could be just her throwing us all off, or maybe this will be a new version of Mary Jane Watson that we've never seen before, which, again, I'm not opposed to. When the rumor came out that she may play Mary Jane Watson, I wasn't outraged like a lot of other people because of the color of her skin. I thought maybe there's just a new way they're going with it, and I was fine with that. If she ends up playing Mary Jane Watson, then I hope she does roll justice. If she doesn't, then all that bitching complaining that people did was for nothing. So we'll see what happens. I'm pretty sure we'll probably get a trailer sometime early next year. Maybe we'll even get a little tease this year. I doubt that, but although I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, no, I would be surprised, but I would be surprised if we got a full trailer this year, which I don't think we will. But Spider-Man Homecoming will be directed by John Watts and will also star Robert Downey Jr., Marisa Tomei, Michael Keaton, Donald Glover, and Jon Favreau. The film will come out next year on July 7th. Fox is already developing a Deadpool 3 with plans on bringing in X-Force because Fox loves money. And they know we will give them money if Deadpool is on the screen. So Deadpool was a surprise hit earlier this year, and despite all the potential drama behind the scenes, right now with Tim Miller leaving the director's chair over creative differences, and just recently the film lost their composer, Junkie XL, Fox is still moving forward with the sequel. However, again, they're already looking past that sequel and working on a Deadpool 3. Another Hollywood reporter notes that Deadpool 3 is already being worked on, and the plan is to feature the group X-Force. Now, the original plan was to make it a solo X-Force movie, but it looks like Fox wants to make sure, if they do intend to make that solo X-Force movie, that the possible film will be a success, and what better way to do it than to introduce them in a Deadpool movie. And what makes the move make sense is it's not like, oh, we're just going to throw these characters in a Deadpool movie and just, hopefully people will stick to them. X-Force in the comics was led by Deadpool's friend, enemy, complicated relationship, Cable, who will appear in Deadpool 2. Now, X-Force, for those of you guys who don't know, it's a group of mutants who come together and have their own, misadventures, to say the least. I don't want to get too into it just in case, because it's complicated. And Cable in himself is already a complicated character, so I don't want to blow my head off at the moment. So Deadpool 3, there's very complicated. This is part of a complicated news item. Well, not complicated, just confusing and interesting. Deadpool 3 is a first step in Fox's new plan for the X-Men universe. And now we'll get the X-Men universe story is going to be our last news story of the news cycle. So we're going to get to that in just a little bit. But since they're already they're moving past that and they're talking about Deadpool 3, which is fine considering that Deadpool is somewhat set within the X-Men universe, but they were also using mutants that weren't attached to the storyline that we're following now since First Class and Days of Future Past and Apocalypse. So it kind of makes sense that maybe Deadpool will be its own thing. We don't know. Again, I'll get to that in just a second right now. But Deadpool 3 is in the works, and X-Force they will be introduced in the Deadpool 3. Not Deadpool 2 or Deadpool 3. Although I'm sure they'll probably tease them in Deadpool 2. Let's talk about Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. No, not the first movie, the second one, because they're already talking about the sequel. So like we mentioned last week, actually, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them sequel is already in the works before the first film even comes out. But that hasn't stopped them. That hasn't stopped Warner Brothers. They already announced there will be 4 sequels. They announced that Johnny Depp will be added to the cast, which we talked about last week, in a mysterious role, and we'll get to that in a second. But they just dropped some new nuggets this week. One of them being that Screen Rant had an exclusive from director David Yates that a popular character from the book will appear in the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them sequel. Dumbledore! Yes, the future headmaster of Hogwarts will appear in the sequel to Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Right now, the word is that the studio has begun casting on the very important role, although they haven't dropped any hints on who could potentially play Dumbledore. Now, the second bit of news is that we finally know who Johnny Depp is playing. And it's someone that's been rumored and speculated the last week, and one that has a connection to Dumbledore in the Harry Potter history/lore. Johnny Depp will play, and I'm going to butcher this name, so please, for the love of God, Harry Potter fans, do not come after me. Johnny Depp will be playing Grindelwald. He has a first name, but I'm pretty sure, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, so I'm not even going to try to pronounce the first name. He will be playing Grindelwald, who has a history again with Dumbledore, and he has a connection with Dumbledore, and he who should not be named, and the Elder Wand. So he's very important in the Harry Potter lore and history, and of course fans will really know who he is. I'm not so delved into the Harry Potter history and lore, so I'm not gonna even try to pretend that I know who he is. I barely remember the name from the films, because they do mention him in the Harry Potter movies, but he's playing a very important character, and it looks like he's going to be playing a big role, Johnny Depp, as Grindelwald in the future films. So it should be interesting to see where they go from there. He may appear, he may not. There's been some conflicting reports that he may or may not appear in the first film, or at least be teased in the first film. So look out for that. Moreover, Yates and producer David Heyman dropped more tidbits about the sequel, saying the film will bring back the action to Europe. They mentioned the UK and Paris, and they did mention that America, which is where the first film is set, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, will be mentioned, but most of the action will take place back in Europe. They also said that Ezra Miller's character Credence will play a, quote, quite crucial role in the sequel, whatever that means. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them 2 will open on November 16th, 2018, while the first film opens next week, so we'll talk more about Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them once again on next week's podcast. So the idea, Dumbledore, it makes somewhat sense. The Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them takes place in the 20s in New York. So I think at this point the characters would be not teenagers, but they would be younger parts of themselves. So Dumbledore again, all of this takes place before the events of Harry Potter. It takes place like something like 70 years, 80 years before the Harry Potter events happen. So having Dumbledore, having him attached, because there was no way. There was a way, but there was no way that the studio would be like, oh, we're just gonna cut the characters out completely. No, because these characters were around at that point. Dumbledore was around at that point. This new character he's not a new character, but the character played by Johnny Depp was around at that point, and apparently he wasn't that great of a guy, from what I've been reading. But I don't know. As for Johnny Depp, I think I mentioned last week that I hope that he doesn't go over the top, because I'm tired of over the top Johnny Depp character guy. I'm over it. I don't care about over the top Johnny Depp character anymore. So it should be interesting to see kind of where that goes. I just hope that, they reel in a little bit of Johnny Depp's tendency to go a little over the top. And it doesn't sound like maybe he'll be going over the top, but just, you never know. So we'll talk more about all this when we get more information. Alright, let's move on to the next news item, which had a lot of people pissed off. An American Werewolf in London remake is in the works. No! Son of a bitch! A remake of the 1981 classic An American Werewolf in London, with an interesting twist behind the scenes, not in the movie. The film has a writer and director in final negotiations in Max Landis, who happens to be the son of the original director, John Landis. Now, John Landis will be attached to the film as an executive producer, with Robert Kirkman from Walking Dead fame and David Albert producing the film with their Skybound Entertainment banner. So, for those of you not familiar with the original film, which you should watch, by the way, if you haven't seen it, you really should watch it. The film follows a pair of friends backpacking through England when they are attacked by a werewolf, but things don't really end there. There's a lot more to that. The film is much more than a horror movie. It really is. It really is much more than a horror film. And again, I highly recommend that you watch it. I won't spoil it for those of you who haven't watched it, even though it is an old movie, but I want you guys to see it if you can. The film did get a sequel, by the way. It was not directed by Landis. It was directed by someone else called Anthony Waller. It was called An American Werewolf in Paris, although that one doesn't get a lot of love like American Werewolf in London, but just letting you know there is a sequel out there. I actually haven't seen American Werewolf in Paris, so I know I can't share in the hate or the displeasure for that film. So this isn't the first time that Max Landis has been attached to the remake of American Werewolf in London, but it looks like this time maybe this one actually is true and will stick, because last time he came out and said, no, I'm not attached to it, and it seems like he's been kind of quiet, although I haven't really checked his Twitter, which is usually where he branches out and talks about the projects he's attached to. So that's the twist. It's interesting. So this is rather interesting. Max Landis, of course, being the son, directing the film that his father originally directed. And it doesn't mean that Max Landis gets a pass. It's like, oh, okay, he's passing down the torch to his son. No. The remake does have some major shoes to fill, since the original, again, is been... You go on every post that this news item was... Where this news item came out. I'm guaranteed that 97%, 99% of the comments are negative. I guarantee you. But this movie has a major uphill battle against itself, because it's going up against the original. I highly doubt that they're gonna even compare to the groundbreaking makeup and practical effects by Rick Baker in that film. The transformation scene alone, and everyone who's seen the movie knows exactly which transformation scene I'm talking about. It is just amazing. And Max Landis, is very hit and miss. He has very hit and miss record. He's written films like Chronicle, Victor Frankenstein, American Ultra, Me, Him, Her, which is actually the film he directed. There's a movie called Mr. Right that he wrote, and right now he has a show that he wrote. It's going to premiere on BBC America soon, called Dick Gently, which I think is based off a comic book. I could be wrong about that. And he also has a Netflix original film that he wrote called Bright. But one of the kind of the major things that everyone kind of knows is his short videos. He written and directed a short film called The Death and Return of Superman and Wrestling Isn't Wrestling, which are very funny. If you haven't seen them, I highly recommend you do. And he has like a few like of his friends in there, which happen to be some pretty recognizable people and names. So there's that. And Landis is a fan of film. He's made that very clear. And I highly doubt that he will do anything to mess with a film that is as loved like American Werewolf in London, especially seeing the legacy that film created for his father. I mean, John Landis has directed many other great films, which if you're not familiar with John Landis, I highly recommend you take this weekend and just watch all of it. Well, maybe not all of his films, but most of his films you should watch. And so Max Landis isn't going to come in and be like, I'm going to mess up what my father created. No, I highly doubt he's going to do that. Am I behind the remake? I don't know, because again, because I saw an American Werewolf in London way later. I mean, the film wasn't even out when I wasn't even born yet when the film came out. But when I found out about the film, I didn't watch it for a long time. I didn't watch it until until like my senior year of high school. Yeah, probably then, which was back in 2009, by the way. Just to make you feel, just maybe to make some of you feel old. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know how I feel. Part of me wants to believe that Max Landis is not gonna screw this movie up. Part of me also feels like he's gonna want to keep the legacy and the feel of that film, but also do his own thing, which is completely okay. Which is what remakes should do in a lot of cases, especially with these very beloved films. And again, we've talked about remakes here on the podcast before. There is nothing making you go watch this movie. There's nothing making you forcing you to go watch this movie. You don't want to watch it? You don't have to watch it. You can stay at home that weekend and watch American Werewolf in London on your own TV and not worry about it. The day people... I'm going to say this every time that a remake news comes up. I am. The day we should complain and bitch and moan and be worried that a big time studio is remaking a movie that we all love or that came out years ago is the day that they come to our houses and physically take from us every copy that we have. Is the day they remove every copy from shelves, from whatever warehouses like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they keep all their copies, and they just bring them all together, and then they just completely wipe the internet of every copy of that movie and just put it in a big ass pile and set it on fire so we can never have anything to watch the original again. That is the day we should complain and bitch and moan and worry when a studio says, hey, you know that thing you loved when you were a kid? Guess what? We're going to remake it. Hand it over. That is a day we should be rewarded. The day they completely wipe any sort of existence and memory of that original piece is the day people should start complaining about remakes. Otherwise, there is nothing forcing you to go watch that movie. You don't want to go watch it? Stay home that weekend. Watch the original. Go watch something else. Or just stay at home and be bitter. I don't know. Whatever fancies your boat. That's not even the expression, but I don't care. Man, I'm angry now. So there's no word yet on when the film will go into production, but it's being made. So start your rage now, I guess. Jessica Chastain is set to play her first comic book character in Painkiller Jane. Jessica Chastain has made pretty much a name for herself in the last 5 years or so, all within different genres and different big titles like The Help, The Tree of Life, Lawless, Zero Dark 30, Mama, Interstellar, A Most Violent Year, The Martian, Crimson Peak, and most recently, The Huntsman's Winter War. She has a movie coming up called Miss Sloane, coming up, I believe, at the end of the month. And she has pretty exciting projects coming up next year. The Zookeeper's Wife, Molly's Game, and of even further future project, the video game adaptation of The Division. But one genre that she hasn't been a part of just yet, and I think one that many fans have been very interested in seeing her in. She was almost in a comic book movie before. I just ruined it. The comic book genre. She was gonna be in Iron Man 3. She was originally gonna play the character that Rebecca Hall ended up playing. But now it looks like she's going to do a comic book movie anyway, but it's not going to be a Marvel or DC film. According to reports, Chastain will star and produce in the film adaptation of In Painkiller Jane. For those that don't know the character, she was created in 1995, and it followed Jane Vosco. She was a New York police officer who infiltrated a mob organization. And depending on which origin story you kind of decide to follow, because it was originally one thing and then they changed it very handful years back. Something happens that causes her to pretty much almost die, and then eventually she is given the ability to heal at an incredible rate, hence the name Painkiller Jane. So the character's been adapted before. There was a TV movie on the Sci-Fi Channel when it was actually called the Sci-Fi Channel. Now it's just called Sci-Fi, back in 2005. And the film made a lot of changes to the character, even her name and pretty much her overall story. And then it eventually became a TV series on the Sci-Fi Channel. And it kind of went back a little bit to the original character and everything else. And that series was canceled after one season. So one would think that the film would be more faithful to the comics, considering that is a thing that they do now. But either way, when it comes to Jessica Chastain, I think she's a very interesting choice, and it's one that I can really get behind, because obviously Chastain, you just read the list of films I announced, and that's not even all of them that she's been in. She is always putting her talent on full display. She never phones it in. She's always giving it 100% when she does a role. So finally kind of seeing her play a comic book character could be a lot of fun and could be really cool. Now, I don't know too much about Painkiller Jane. I actually never saw the TV movie, even though I wanted to, but I never did. And the fact that she's starring in this and that she's producing this, that her and whatever pitch they sold her on and whatever idea they came to her and said, hey, this is the character we really hope you can play, and she said yes. So whatever it was, I'm sure it's going to be great. I'm sure it's going to be awesome. And the fact that she wants to do it is a really good first start to all of that. So I hope that there's no production date yet. It's just announced, so it should be interesting to see how this moves on and gets developed as the time goes by. Alright, so let's move on to the next news item. We have our first official look of King Kong in the new King Kong movie, Kong Skull Island. How many times can I say King Kong? King Kong, King Kong. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. Entertainment Weekly released the first photo of their new King Kong for the I'm doing it again. For the King Kong film, Kong Skull Island. For those not know yet, the new film is directed by Jordan Vogt Roberts, who directed the great indie film Kings of Summer, which I highly recommend you guys watch if you haven't already. And takes place in the 1970s during the Vietnam War. It stars Tom Hiddleston, a British Special Forces soldier, while Brie Larson plays a war photographer, who are all in a group who go to explore the mysterious and dangerous island of Spall Island, where they encounter the mythical King Kong. The design of Kong isn't really that groundbreaking. I mean, the picture it's just a picture, but it's not groundbreaking. It's not nothing new, and it's probably what you expect King Kong to look like. But it's still pretty cool to see them release an image of King Kong before the movie, and potentially probably before a new trailer comes out. Something tells me we're probably gonna get a new trailer soon for this as well. But Vaughn Roberts did release some quotes for the film, including his approach to reimagining King Kong, saying this: "I made a mandate that I wanted a kid to be able to doodle him on the back of a piece of homework," which I thought was kind of funny when I read it for the first time. Anyways, he goes on to say, "and for his shapes to be simple and hopefully iconic enough that a third grader could draw that shape and you would know what it is. A big part of our Kong was I wanted to make something that gave the impression that he was a lonely god, that he was a remote figure lumbering around the island. We sort of went back to the 1933 version in the sense that he's a bipedal creature that walks in an upright position as opposed to the anthropomorphic, anatomically correct silverback gorilla that walks in all fours." You won't know this in editing, but I messed that up. I messed that sentence up. I'm just telling you right now. I can clearly edit this out, but I'm not going to. I messed that up quite a lot when I was reading it for the first time. Anyway, our Kong was intended to say, this isn't just a big gorilla or a big monkey. This is something that is its own species. It has its own set of rules, so we can do what we want to really pay homage to what came before, and yet do something completely different. And I can respect that. I mean, you don't want to copy what's already been done. Especially with a character like King Kong, who has had his story told so many times, and there's so many different versions of him. And one version was the Peter Jackson film, which was the last King Kong movie released, and that is something that even he goes in. The director, Vaughn Roberts, he said that he wanted to play on the myth of the 1933 version instead of the Peter Jackson King Kong. And the Peter Jackson film, in itself, is actually a homage to the 1933 film. But here's his comment saying, "I wanted to tell a movie about what happens when people are reconfronted with myths and put them into the food chain and how that makes them react and behave. And I think that Kong is a myth that we have been telling now. So if you're going to re-engage with that myth, I think it's important on a larger scale, but also on a franchise scale, to make it a new myth," which is pretty cool. And he went on in this issue to reiterate his point that he made at San Diego Comic-Con, that this is not a Beauty and the Beast story, which is, again, something that's been told so many times in the King Kong films. This is, I'm going to use his words, it's sort of fundamentally a new telling with some of the myths of this world and some of the imagery, and ideas within this world. So it's not a Beauty and the Beast story, which I think is pretty cool. And again, it's you don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again with King Kong, because eventually we all know how it's going to end. But for him to go on and do this and make it a period piece set during the Vietnam War, have these characters essentially meet a god for the first time is pretty cool. And finally, he made a statement that I think is going to make a lot of fans happy about how much potential screen time King Kong will actually get. And the comment actually goes into the now in-universe film Godzilla, directed by Gareth Edwards. And I'll get to that in a second, what that means. Here's what he said. "We are also fundamentally not playing the same game that Gareth Edwards' Godzilla did and most monster movies do, which I'm sort of sick of, that notion that a monster movie needs to wait an hour or 40 minutes until the creature shows up. Kong traditionally does not show up until very, very late in the monster movie. So a lot of these movies, I seriously cannot read. A lot of these movies tend to have the structure that's a bit of a slow burn. Something about this movie made me want to reject that and play a very, very different game." And why I didn't mind the slow burn Godzilla, because I think it made the payoff at the end a little more worth it. I think these comments are pretty cool. I think it sounds like we're in for a fun ride. And I say in-universe, I meant in-universe film, because Warner Brothers and Legendary are not only working on a Godzilla 2, which will not be directed by Gareth Edwards because he dropped out. They are working on a King Kong versus Godzilla film. So it makes sense that they would want to try to connect these films, again, and maybe Kong will set the stage for that connection It is set in a different period, but, either way, it should be interesting to see. And I can't wait for Kong Skull Island. The Comic-Con trailer that came out, which is the only trailer for the film so far, I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it really kind of showed a new tone and showed just a kind of, this King Kong is going to just rip shit up. I already swore once in the podcast, so I'm just going to keep doing it. He's just going to just rip things. He's just going to be a monster, it just looks like. So I can't wait to see what they're going to do with this. So besides Tom Hiddleston and Brie Larson, the film also stars Toby Kebbell, Samuel L. Jackson, John Goodman, Corey Hawkins, Jason Mitchell, Thomas Mann, and John C. Reilly, of course, amongst others. Kong Skull Island opens next year on March 10th, so keep a lookout on that. Robert Redford says he might retire from acting. Now, if you don't know the name Robert Redford, first of all, shame on you. I highly recommend you sit back this weekend and go watch his amazing resume of films. There's way too many to name, but some of the big ones that always get mentioned: Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, All the President's Men, The Sting, more recently All Is Lost. He's an amazing director. He had a small role in Pete's Dragon earlier this year. Overall, he's amazing, and he's one of those actors that when he pops into a film, you're in for something special, because he always gives, like Jessica Chastain that we mentioned earlier, and a few other people that we mentioned earlier on the podcast, I'm sure. He always gives 110%. Always. He is one of those guys that has been working for a while, and just one of those guys where it's just like you can totally get behind. And the fact that he said this has probably kind of come to a shock to a lot of people. But when you hear his reasoning, it makes a little bit of sense. So he did an interview with his grandson, of all people, at the Walker Arts Center's website. And this is what he said. He said, "I'm getting tired of acting. I'm an impatient person, so it's hard for me to sit around and do take after take after take. At this point in my life, age 80, it'd give me more satisfaction because I'm not dependent on anyone. It's just me, just the way it used to be, and so going back to sketching, that's sort of where my head is right now, so I'm thinking of moving in that direction and not acting so much." He went on to say that he does have a few titles left to come out. One of them is a, quote, love story for older people who get a second chance called Our Souls at Night with Jane Fonda, and a lighter piece with Casey Affleck and Sissy Spacek called Old Man with a Gun. He said, "Once they're done, then I'm going to say, okay, that's goodbye to all that, and then just focus on directing." He did continue on to say that when he was a teenager, he was an artist. That's kind of where he started out. And he actually traveled to Europe and increased his skill set and wanted to explore telling stories through painting. Later on, when he became an actor, he wasn't sure if he wanted to continue to be an actor because of his passion of painting, and that led him to eventually be a director because he could combine his passion of painting and telling a story through doing his own storyboards. So for those that don't know, Redford has 10 films under his belt as he is a director. He started off with his first film, Ordinary People, back in 1980, which starred Donald Sutherland, Mary Tyler Moore, Judd Hirsch, and Timothy Hutton. He went on to direct films like the Milagro Benfield War, A River Runs Through It, Quiz Show, The Horse Whisperer, The Legend of Bagger Vance, Lions for Lambs, The Conspirator, The Company You Keep, and a segment in the documentary Cathedral of Culture. So he's not done with Hollywood. He's done with acting. And again, I can at his age, he said it was 80 years old. He's been in the film business for a while. It's changed, obviously, from when he first started to now. I can see kind of why he's maybe lost some of the appeal that he's had for the business. It's not like he said, he says he's tired of acting, but he's not tired of the business. Obviously, he says he's going to stick to directing. So I think that's a good way to go. You have actors who were in front of the camera, then they just changed their perspective and were like, they just want to stick behind the camera, which is fine. And I think that's a natural progression, especially for a guy like Robert Redford, who, like I said, has been in the business for a long time. So this is, if we don't see him in front of cameras anymore, maybe every once in a while he'll pop in like in a small or cameo role or something like that. But for the meantime, I mean, just enjoy him. Let's try to enjoy the films he has left coming out. Like I said, he is a terrific director or an actor and a director as well, that has been around for a while, and it's to be a shame to see him retire from acting, to not see that anymore. But again, I can see kind of where he's coming from, and he's not leaving Hollywood, he's just leaving acting. So it'd be a shame to see him go, but if he doesn't want to do it anymore, then he doesn't want to do it. Alright, so let's get to our final news item of the day, which is the news item I briefly mentioned earlier. The X-Men franchise is being, quote, reconfigured, whatever that means. So the Hollywood Reporter is reporting that the X-Men franchise is being, again, quote, reconfigured. And I know a lot of headlines are saying rebooted and all that, but the actual wording is refigured. Now, the one thing that will remain the same is that Simon Kinberg, who has been a producer and writer on the franchise since, I believe, First Class. I don't know if he came in before First Class or after, but I know since First Class he's been attached to it, and he's been one of the big names behind the scenes as well for that. He will remain to work on a new script for the new X-Men film, and one name that will not return is Bryan Singer, who of course started the X-Men franchise back in 2000. He directed the sequel before leaving and coming back to direct Days of Future Pasts and, of course, Apocalypse earlier this year. And speaking of Apocalypse, one of the reasons, it seemed kind of like one of the reasons, at least from the report that I read, that Apocalypse, even though it made money, it didn't make as much money as the studio probably wanted. It kind of hints that maybe the reason why the X-Men franchise is being reconfigured is because of Apocalypse. Which, again, may or may not be true, who knows. But it kind of seemed that way from a couple of different reports that I read. So let's dig in a little deeper. Apocalypse introduced these new group of mutants. It introduced us to, well, not necessarily new, it was a new / old group of mutants. Younger versions of the mutants we already know. We had Jean Grey, played by Sophie Turner. We had Cyclops, played by Ty Sheridan. We had Nightcrawler, played by Cody Smith-McPhee. And we had Storm, played by Alexandra Shipp. So it kind of seemed like we were going to follow these new group of mutants, these younger group of mutants, and follow them through for the next X-Men film, which could be the case still. But again, this is confusing because the report doesn't really go that deeply into what's going on. It just says it's being reconfigured at the moment, and Fox is figuring stuff out. One thing that they assume, and it looks like it may happen, is that the contracts, or not that will happen because it is already done, the contracts for Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, and James McAvoy are up. Their deals have expired. If they want them to come on and keep doing X-Men films, they're going to have to sign them on again to give them new contracts, which will probably mean they'll have to pay them a little bit more, considering that Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, and James McAvoy are now big names in Hollywood. Not like they were when X-Men First Class first started, because they weren't as busy and they weren't as big and they weren't as highly sought out for like they were back then. And if you remember, Jennifer Lawrence has already spoken out. Her performance, or not even performance, her availability in Apocalypse was up in the air because she was, she spoke out about the makeup process for Mystique, that she didn't really like it, or she didn't like the long process of it, which is kind of why she stays in her human form for a big chunk of the movie. Nonetheless, if at the moment Kinberg is writing a script hoping that they can bring those three back, and if that's the case, that script has to be really awesome and at the same time fit within their schedules. So the report goes on to say that even though the franchise is in flux at the moment, Fox is moving forward with other projects set within the universe or set with, mutants in the film. Of course, we talked about Deadpool earlier. We have a potential X-Force movie. Again, they could potentially be in I don't know why I said Spider-Man. Deadpool 3. The solo Gambit film is still something they really want to do, but that's having behind-the-scenes problems because director dropped out for a long time, and they moved that back. They moved it from the release schedule. And then you have Hugh Jackman walking out soon as Logan when the film Logan comes out. And right now, the only mutant film coming out is Josh Boone's adaptation of New Mutants that is set to start filming sometime next year in the spring. I honestly don't know what to think about this, because on one hand, we don't know what the real meaning of Reconfigured really is. Could it be that they're just taking the franchise in a new direction, genre-wise or whatever? Will it be another soft reboot, like what they did with First Class? Because when you face it, all the characters in First Class could be written out. You don't need them. Just follow these new group of heroes. That younger group of people that were introduced in Apocalypse and follow their story. Or could it be that we're just not going to see another X-Men film for a while, more than probably what we expected? Or for whatever reason, they're really just going to go and be like, screw it, we're just going to reboot the whole franchise. Which I think would be pretty dumb, to be honest. Because, yes, Apocalypse wasn't that great. I didn't mind Apocalypse. It wasn't awesome, but it wasn't as terrible as a lot of people probably make it out to be. Days of Future Past was great. First Class was awesome. First Class made me have faith in the X-Men franchise again. So I don't know. I honestly don't know where they can go with this. I don't know what Reconfigured means. I just hope that they figure it out soon and they tell us what it really means, because right now Reconfigured can mean a lot of things. And people are using the term reboot. So I don't know where they're going to go with that. So obviously when I figure out and when they figure out what's going on, I will let you guys know. But this is interesting. I mean, I don't want them to go full on reboot. I know they're losing Hugh Jackman. The contracts for Michael Fassbender, James McAvoy, and Jennifer Lawrence have expired. And again, I mean, if you got these younger actors now. You got Ty Sheridan, you had Sophie Turner, you had Alexandra Shipp and Cody Smith-McPhee. Just follow them. You got Evan Peters as Quicksilver in there as well. Follow them. Don't just be like, oh well, we introduced all these new characters. Too bad. Who cares? Because we've seen that done before already. I don't want to go through that pain again of having to invest in new characters. Because you already had new characters. You can just follow them and I'll be okay with that. So just go with that and don't do a full reboot. I don't know. I don't think that's the best course of action. There is a new timeline, which may be what they meant. I don't know, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. We got Deadpool on the horizon. We got New Mutants going to film soon. We'll see what happens. I will obviously let you guys know. Alright, so that was all the news items for this week. Let's move on to trailer talk. We got a few trailers coming out. They all kind of just dropped near the end of the week, which is kind of interesting. So there's a new trailer for Underworld Blood Wars. It looks a little bit more or less the same as the other trailers. There's some more new footage in there. I don't know. It's coming out in January. It's probably one of those January beginning of the year movies where yeah, why not? Let's go watch it. There's a new trailer for the Will Smith-led film drama. It's a drama, Collateral Beauty, which looks okay. I mean, this new trailer kind of goes a little bit more into the character and stuff like that. That comes out in December. There's a new international trailer for Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which looks really good. Looks really cool. And I read this little section of the news that says rebellions are built on hope. And I know the writer was making a little joke on, of course, what's going on at the moment. And he said that those words never rang more true, which could be true. But yeah, new international trailer. Just a little bit new scenes in there. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's nothing groundbreaking. Like, oh, I never seen that before. Don't show me. Some new scenes in there. There's a little smidget of Vader in there as well. Besson directed first trailer for Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. That looks absolutely like a crazy fun ride. It really does. Luc Besson, of course, directed The Fifth Element, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. It looks like a completely fun ride. The trailer just filled with these really great visuals and the special effects looks pretty cool, and you get a bunch of different alien species in there. It looks so cool, and it looks like it's gonna be a lot of fun. So definitely check that out. And the big trailer this week is the Ben Affleck directed and starring film Live by Night. They released a new trailer that is awesome. It gives you a better sense of this gritty gangster world, seedy underworld that we're gonna dive into in the movie. It's a great trailer. I love the first trailer too. I mean, it had some missteps in there, but this trailer is a lot more solid than the first one, and it's got a great cast. You got Zoe Saldana in there. You got Elle Fanning in there. You have Brendan Gleeson, Chris Cooper, a bunch of other people that I'm sure I'm missing, but those are the names that stuck out to me that I saw that were in the cast. It looks awesome. It does. It looks great. It's one of the best. It's one of the best trailers of the week for me. So yeah, all the trailers, of course, will be linked down below in the description/show notes area, so you guys can go check that out. All right, so let's move on to this week's releases. We only have one real big limited release this week, which is Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, which is based off a novel by Ben Fountain and directed by Ang Lee. This is getting a 3D limited release this week, along with its special. I forgot what kind of frame rate it is. I didn't write it down because I'm a dum-dum. But it's directed by Ang Lee. It's done in a different frame rate. It's done in 3D. It's playing only in a few cities. So if you want to check that out, you can. But it gets expanded next week in 2D and in 3D as well. But it's getting a limited release this week. If you want to go check that out, it follows a 19-year-old Billy Lynn, played by newcomer Joe Alwyn. I think that's how you say his name. Is brought home for a victory tour after a harrowing Iraq battle. Through flashbacks, the film shows what really happened to his squad, contrasting the realities of war with America's perceptions. The film also stars Kristen Stewart, Vin Diesel, Garrett Hedlund, Tim Blake Nelson, Chris Tucker, and Steve Martin. I don't know, the film, I've only seen, this isn't getting a lot of promotion. I've seen the trailer, I think maybe once in theaters. It doesn't look that bad. The trailers don't really give too much away. So I don't know, I can't really gauge what to think about, but it is Ang Lee. He directed Life of Pi. He's directed a lot of other great films as well. So it should be interesting to see kind of where this one goes. All right, so let's move on to this week's wide releases. This one's getting it's getting a wide release, but it's really kind of one of those yeah, it's a wide release. It's just barely passing the wide release margin. This one is Shut In. It's described as a heart-pounding thriller about a widowed child psychologist played by Naomi Watts who lives in an isolated existence in rural New England. Caught in a deadly winter storm, she must find a way to rescue a young boy, played by Jacob Tremblay, before he disappears forever. The film also stars Charlie Heaton and Oliver Platt. I haven't seen a trailer for this in theaters. I've only seen a trailer for this online, and I just saw the first trailer, or TV commercial I should say, on TV, and it just happened to be in Spanish. So I don't know if a lot of people are even know that Shun is coming out. But you got Naomi Watts, you got Jacob Tremblay, you got Oliver Platt, you got Charlie Heaton from Stranger Things. I think I don't know. This could be one of those little movies that maybe surprises everyone, or maybe it's I saw it, So I don't know. I am interested in seeing it. It's, again, you can't go wrong with Naomi Watts. So the next film is Almost Christmas. It's the holiday season, guys. A dysfunctional family gathers together for their first Thanksgiving since their mom passed away. The film stars Danny Glover, Gabrielle Union, Jesse T. Usher, Omar Epps, Monique, and J.B. Smoove. This is another one I haven't seen that many trailers for. I've seen a lot of TV spots for it. I didn't see the trailer in theaters, so but this one's definitely gonna gather a crowd. People probably want to see a comedy right now, and this will definitely find an audience for it. So don't count out Almost Christmas just yet. And the final wide release coming out this week is Arrival, based on the short story titled Story of Your Life, and directed by Denis Villeneuve. A linguist, played by Amy Adams, is recruited by the military to assist in translating alien communications. The film also stars Jeremy Renner and Forrest Whitaker. This one is one I've been waiting for a while. From the moment I saw the teaser trailer, I think it was a teaser for the teaser, or the teaser for the trailer. I don't remember anymore. It was one of those longer, because that we live now in a world where it's watch the 5-second, 10-second teaser for the teaser coming out next week or tomorrow. But I saw that it was one of those longer teasers for the eventual longer trailer that would come out, and I was hooked on the teaser. I really was. It looks fantastic. Denis Villeneuve is one of those is quickly becoming one of my favorite, if not he already is on my favorite directors list. You got Amy Adams in there, you got Jeremy Renner in there, you got Forrest Whitaker in there. The visuals, just the cinematography, because we just see the ship, and the ship looks, I'm sure the ship is a visual effect, but the ship looks pretty cool. And just on the backdrop of the visuals and the cinematography of it all, it looks fantastic. I didn't even know this was based on a short story until the trailer came out, and I saw that it was based on a true story, or on a short story, I should say. So I haven't read the short story. I don't want to get spoiled. I'm been hearing nothing but good reviews about this movie, and it's getting a lot of good reviews. So I think maybe this is one of those films that's going to surprise a lot of people. And again, it's got a great cast, great director, cinematography looks awesome. Hearing nothing but great things. I'm definitely going to go watch it this weekend. I really hope that it delivers. I really do. So once again, Arrival, Almost Christmas, Shut In, and Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk are your films coming out this week. Billy Lynn getting a special 3D higher frame rate release this week, and will get expanded next week when it comes out in 2D, and I also believe it'll probably come out in 3D as well. Shut In is getting a wide release. It's considered a wide release, but it's getting the theater count isn't that huge. Almost Christmas and Arrival being the bigger movies that you can that you have a better chance of seeing probably at your local theaters. So let's get to this week's box office predictions. Little game, of course, I like to play. My picks last week actually were the box office. I think I'm 3, 4. I don't know how many episodes we've done for the box office predictions, but I've predicted the box office now. I think this is my 3rd time. So my picks last week and the actual box office last week were Doctor Strange at number 1, Trolls at number 2, Hacksaw Ridge at number 3, Boo! A Madea Halloween at number 4, and Inferno at number 5. This week, my picks. This week's going to be interesting because we have Doctor Strange, of course, the big Marvel film, and you have Arrival. Both of them are getting good reviews and good word of mouth at the moment, so this is going to be interesting. I'm going to pick Arrival for number 1. I think the intrigue, and I think the fact that the movie hasn't really shown anything is one, I think, but I think the good word of mouth will put Arrival on number 1. I will not be ashamed. I don't know, I had no reason to be ashamed. I won't be upset if Arrival isn't number 1 and messes up my picks, but I'm okay with that. So I'm picking Arrival number 1. I'm picking Doctor Strange at number 2. I'm completely okay if that's reversed, but my official pick is Arrival at number 1, Doctor Strange at number 2, Trolls at number 3, Hacksaw Ridge at number 4, and I think that Almost Christmas will come in at number 5. I think that Boo! A Madea Halloween, it's past the Halloween season, and then we should be moving on to Thanksgiving, but there's no real Thanksgiving movies anymore. They're just Christmas movies, which is fine, whatever. So I think that Almost Christmas will get that top 5 spot. So my picks once again: Arrival number 1, Doctor Strange at number 2, Trolls at number 3, Hacksaw Ridge at number 4, and Almost Christmas at number 5. Hacksaw Ridge also getting a lot of good reviews, so I think that's what's going to stick. But there's no real kids movie coming out this weekend, which is why I have Trolls over it again this weekend. Alright guys, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. You guys have been great. Thank you for sticking through. And again, any other news items that drop once the podcast goes up, you are more than welcome to go like my Facebook page at facebook.com/moviepit. That's facebook.com/moviepit. Link will be down below in the comments / description area if you want to go click on that and give me a like over there. You guys get an early preview of what we're going to talk about on the podcast. There's also news items that I put up there that I don't talk about on the podcast for the sake of time or just for the sake of, flow, or sometimes just news items that I don't really have too much to say, so I just put them up on the Facebook page anyway. So there's that. You also get a link to all the trailers there as well. You could just click on them and watch them before and kind of know a little bit what I'm talking about in trailer talk segment that we do. And yeah, also you can go like my review page. I also link the reviews to my Facebook page as well, but if you just want to like my review page, you can go to movieswithchris.wordpress.com. That's movieswithchris.wordpress.com. A clickable link will be down below in the description/show notes area. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. You guys have been great. If you want to leave a comment down below about what was your favorite news item of the week, what movie you're looking forward to, maybe you already saw a movie and you came back to the podcast and to the podcast link and just want to say, what you thought about it. Or maybe you want to play along with the box office prediction game. You're more than welcome to play along with that. So leave me comments down below. I want to hear from you guys. Even if it's just a simple hi, how's it going? Or did you hear about this news item? Just let me, I just want to hear from you guys. I want to get you guys more involved in the podcast when I possibly can. So, so that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening. This is the part where I usually say just have a safe, fun weekend and go watch some movies, which I will say, but obviously this weekend's a little different. I'm not gonna go fully into it. I'm just gonna say this election. That's what I'm talking about, just in case you guys don't know. We don't get political on the podcast. We talk about movies. That's all we talk about. But we are in a state of change at the moment. So all I'm going to say is just be careful. Be extremely more careful. Be extremely more safe this weekend. It's the first weekend of a new era, let's put it that way, of America. And just be extra safe. Be extra careful. And just try to live your life as much as you can. Don't add on to the layers of hate, and just I don't even know. There's so many other people that have said more inspirational things. I'm trying to just grab it off the top of my head, but I can't. So just be extra careful. Just be extra safe. Just try to live your life as much as you can, and just don't add on to just don't add to the gas. Just don't add gasoline to the fire. That's what I'm trying to say. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Stay safe. Have a good weekend, and go watch some movies.